What's up, guys? Welcome back to the simulation. Tonight, we're talking about the moon. There is something wrong with the moon. It's older than the Earth's crust. It never shows us its dark side, ever. NASA smashed hardware into it and the thing rang like a bell for hours. There are ancient cultures, talk about a time before the moon, remote viewers, ex-Intel guys, weird declassified PDFs, all hinting at structures, machinery, even a soul recycling box sitting on the far side like a cosmic USB hub for human souls. So is this just a super convenient rock, a hollowed out off-planet base, or a piece of artificial hardware that somebody parked over our heads and never bothered to explain? In this episode, we're diving into the moon. We all grew up with this idea that the moon is just there. It's this harmless little nightlight in the sky, right? But what if it's not what it is at all? What if the moon is the biggest, most obvious anomaly we have? And we're so used to it that we just stop seeing how completely weird it actually is. Because the deeper you go into the mainstream facts about the moon, the more this thing stops feeling like a natural anomaly and starts feeling like a deliberate piece of something that's been parked over our heads for a very long time. It's too big. It's too perfectly placed. Its origin story doesn't really add up. We smash stuff into it and it rings like a bell. And now we're finding caverns and tunnels and perfect little hidey holes under the surface. The perfect kind of underground empty space for someone or something to hide. In this episode, I'm not going to dive deep into every crazy moon theory. That's another episode all on its own. We're just doing Moon 101, the weird version, the version where you actually look at this thing properly and go, hang on, what the hell even is that? We've normalized something that is not normal. So first, I want you to do something really simple. Forget that it's our moon. Pretend you're an alien scientist pulling up into this solar system for the first time, zooming up to Earth like it's just another blue marble. You've got this planet in a nice, comfortable zone around its star. It looks good. Lots of water, atmosphere, potential for life. And then you notice attached to it is this giant satellite. Not a little captured rock like Mars has, nor some random potato-shaped thing. A massive, perfectly round body that's about the quarter of the size of the planet itself. And here's another nice little coincidence that no one really talks about. We only get one moon. Not a cluster of little rocks like Mars, not a ring system. One massive, perfectly placed stabilizer bolted onto the side of the Earth. Our spin axis, the tilt that gives us seasons, it's weirdly stable for a rocky planet. Computer models show that without the moon acting like a giant gyroscope, Earth's tilt would wander all over the place over millions of years, 0 to 60 degrees and back again. Which means climate chaos, ice caps in weird places, the tropics at the poles, and then back again. Now imagine throwing a second moon into that already delicate setup. Another lump of rock tugging on the Earth and tugging on the existing moon, messing with orbital resonance, changing how the whole system works. At that point, you don't have a stabilizer anymore. You've basically turned the planet into a long-term chaos machine. So the irony is, we don't just happen to have one moon. We happen to have one big one. Too few or too small, no stabilization. Too many, the stabilization breaks and you're back to chaos. It's like someone installed one giant counterweight and then never touched the settings again. That is already weird. Most moons are tiny compared to their planets. Ours is comically oversized. Then you realize that the thing doesn't just happen to be there, it's locked to the planet. Tidal locked, so that the same face is always staring back at the surface. One for us, one side permanently turned away. I'm already hearing alarm bells. But hey, maybe I just see conspiracies where there are none. Let's dig a bit further and find out. You've got a huge satellite, always showing the same face, nice and stable, sitting out there like a piece of hardware bolted onto the main system. Without it, you and I wouldn't be here. Our planet would never have remained stable enough for long enough for us to transpire. We grow up with the idea that it's just there, so it feels normal. But from the outside, when you really think about it, I think it looks intentional. Now, obviously, the mainstream isn't going to say, yeah, it's an alien megastructure. What we get taught is the giant impact idea. Early Earth gets absolutely smashed by something roughly the size of Mars. Both bodies basically liquefy. Debris goes into orbit, forms a ring. Out of that ring, you eventually get a moon. Cool visuals. It makes sense on a broad level. I'm not saying it's useless. But when you look at the details, the fingerprints, there are things that don't sit right. If the moon was mostly made from this other body, you'd expect its chemistry to look noticeably different to Earth's. At least a bit. Different ratios, different isotopes. It should carry the signature of the other planet. Instead, when we actually brought rocks back, they basically looked like Earth rocks. The isotopes, the really fine-grained fingerprint, are almost identical. In a lot of cases, they're too similar. Like you're looking at material that came from the same source, not two separate worlds that smashed together. So now they have to tweak the story. Maybe the impact was just at the right angle. Maybe there was more mixing. Maybe the impact was a chemical twin. Maybe. You also have this weird age issue. Some of the moon rocks we've tested are older than any surface rocks we've found on Earth. Some of the stuff we've brought back from the moon is almost as old as the solar system itself, and older than any surface rocks we've ever found on Earth. The solar system's age is pegged at around 4.5 billion years, based on the oldest calcium aluminium rich inclusions we've ever found in meteorites. Basically, they're tiny, super ancient mineral clumps found inside some meteorites. The first solid stuff that ever crystallized in our solar system when the original dust clouds started cooling. Kind of like the burnt crispy bits at the bottom of the cosmic oven. The first things that formed when the whole system switched on. The oldest moon rocks we've dated, especially Highland crust samples from some zircons, they come in at around 4.4 to 4.5 billion years old. So they're basically from the moon's birth window, only 50 to 150 million years younger than the very first solids in the solar system. By comparison, the oldest rocks we've found on Earth's surface are 4.1 to 4.3 billion years old. And even the upper end is still being argued over, which means the moon is holding onto a deeper memory than our planet. The one that actually holds life. Now let's add another layer, because if the moon was just a big random chunk up there, you could kind of shrug it off and move on. But it does this one trick that for me is so on the nose that it almost feels like a joke. From our point of view on Earth, the moon and the sun appear almost exactly the same size in the sky. That is why total solar eclipses are so freaky. The moon doesn't just block the sun, it covers it perfectly, so you get this razor-thin ring of fire and corona. For that to happen, the moon has to be at just the right distance compared to its size. If it was a bit closer or a bit bigger, it would cover the sun completely and you'd get a flat black disk. If it was smaller or further away, you'd just get a tiny bite taken out of the sun. We just happen to live in this tiny little window of time where the moon is exactly the right apparent size to give you this perfect effect. And there are explanations. The moon is slowly drifting away over time, so this is a phase. It won't always be like this. Okay, but that makes it more interesting. So out of billions of years, we happen to be alive in the tiny slice where the numbers line up and the moon turns into this cosmic measuring tool that cuts out the sun like a stencil. What are the odds of that? The sun is about 400 times bigger than the moon, and about 400 times further away, which means from here they look like they're the same size. That cosmic coincidence only works for a tiny window of time, and we just happen to be alive right now to see it. I'm not saying this never happens anywhere else. I'm saying if it does, we haven't seen another one yet. As far as we know, there is no other place we've found where the local star and the local moon line up this perfectly in the sky. Maybe it happens out there somewhere. Whether it's a true 1 in a trillion cosmic glitch or just one scenario in an endless expanse we haven't seen yet, that's still an open question. Now look at its job. That oversized satellite stabilizes Earth's tilt. It gives you predictable tides. It smooths out the chaos of the climate. Without it, you're probably getting wild flips and swings that make it much, much harder to get long-term, stable, complex life. So you've got a planet with life, a giant stabilizing tidally locked satellite, and perfect eclipses. It's interesting. For centuries, astronomers have reported random flashes, glows and mists on the moon, especially around particular craters. NASA even compiled hundreds of these transient lunar phenomena. Blue glows, red flashes, mists that appear and disappear, foggy patches that shouldn't be on a dead world. If you showed that to someone in a sci-fi movie, well, they would probably say, it looks like someone put that there on purpose. Now let's talk about what got a lot of people hooked on the hollow moon rabbit hole. And I've got to admit, I may be a believer. It's a fun one. If you believe we actually did go to the moon, during the Apollo missions, they left seismometers on the surface, little devices listening for moonquakes and impacts. With Apollo 12, when they were done, the spent lunar module was sent to crash into the moon. Not an accident, as an experiment. They wanted to see how the shock waves travelled through the interior. And when that thing collided, the signal it produced didn't just spike and die off like you'd expect from a messy, damp world like Earth. It rang for almost an hour. The scientists at the time described it as ringing like a bell. Not some YouTube conspiracy guy like me, but the scientists, the people looking at the data. So they thought, well, let's do that again. Apollo 13, the third stage of the Saturn V. They crashed it into the moon as well. This time, the ringing went on for something like 3 hours.
Okay, I can see the S4B now out the hatch window, and it's
Okay,
going
Jim.
down.
Suddenly we have a very good picture.
Okay. And Houston, I can see the gold shroud around the IU. Looks like it's all intact.
By the way, Aquarius, we see the results now from 12's seismometer. Looks like your booster just hit the moon and it's rocking it a little bit. Over.
Well, at least something worked on this flight.
And I just want to verify one thing.
Yeah,
We could go ahead.
I'm sure glad we didn't have a limb impact, too.
Right.
Now, the mainstream explanation is the moon is bone dry, more rigid, more fractured, so the waves bounce around longer. Okay, but even if that is all true, it's still strange behavior. You're hitting this thing with a piece of metal and it's sitting there humming. Then you got people like Jason Giorgiani. I'll admit, I'm a bit of a fan. He's looking at those Apollo impact tests and theorizing, what if this isn't just weird? His take is basically, imagine the moon like a giant metal egg. You got a hard outer layer, maybe 20 miles thick. Inside that, a huge volume, potentially 1,000 miles radially toward the core. That isn't one solid, uniform rock wall. In his view, it behaves more like a hollowed out structure, massive caverns, internal framework, maybe even giant machines or oscillators built into the shell that soak up and redistribute the shock when something hits it. Which is why it rings for so long instead of just thudding and stopping. And this isn't just for late night YouTube. 2 Soviet scientists in the 70s actually wrote a straight-faced paper suggesting the moon is a hollow armoured spaceship towed into orbit by an advanced civilization. That was their serious attempt to explain the data. You may not be familiar with it, but Greek writers spoke about tribes who were here before there was a moon. Zulu stories about the moon being brought here. Andean myths that mention the sky changing. I'm not saying they're documentaries, but it's weird that so many old cultures even considered no moon a thing. Fast forward to now. We've had multiple orbiters up there with better instruments. Radar, gravity mapping, all the fun stuff. And suddenly, the conversation around the inside of the moon starts to shift. A Japanese mission to the moon found what looks like a skylight, a hole in the surface that drops down into a massive lava tube. Then there's talk of more of these things, huge underground tunnels carved by ancient volcanic flows, some of them potentially hundreds of kilometers long. Some NASA-linked teams start publishing papers with conclusions that these lava tubes would be an amazing place to put future human habitats. Natural radiation shielding, stable temperatures, giant protected spaces underground. So even in the most boring, respectable version of the story, we've gone from solid ball of rock to Swiss cheese with enormous caverns and tunnels under the crust. Now plug that back into the Giorgiani picture. You've got impact data that believes like you're hitting a rigid shell. You've got modern mapping suggesting giant voids and caverns inside. You've got this permanent far side always turned away from us, which also happens to be the perfect quiet zone for radio telescopes because it's shielded from Earth's electromagnetic noise. So if you were going to build a hidden base or a listening post or anything you didn't want the monkeys on the surface to see, where would you put it? Well, you'd put it on the far side. You'd put it underground. You'd stick it inside the natural cavities and tunnels shielded by rock and leave the outside just looking like a beat-up old grey ball of dust. And here's where it gets even more curious. I want to discuss the idea that information isn't free. The data has a cost in energy, and in super technical sense, it even has a weight. Okay? The simple version is this. A 1 or a 0 isn't magic. It lives in something physical. An electron in a chip, a tiny magnetic domain on a drive, whatever. To flip that bit, to erase it, to store it, you have to put energy in. Physics has this nasty habit of keeping score. So energy and information, they get linked. Once you put that energy into the system, it doesn't just disappear. Einstein kind of ruined that for everyone. E equals mc squared. Energy and mass are two sides of the same coin. So if you're being painfully literal, a machine holding more information is also holding a tiny bit more energy, which means it has a tiny bit more mass. It's ridiculously small. So small we can't really measure it on a normal hard drive, but in principle it's there. Now match that with the moon. We've got these mascons, literal mass concentrations buried under the dark matter, screwing with spacecraft orbits like invisible lead sinkers under the surface. If there was some kind of alien data center baked into this thing, not just a couple of servers, but a planet-scale archive, then those mystery blobs of extra mass start to sound less like boring geology and more like gravity wells of stored information. I'm not saying that's what they are. I'm just saying the moon has lumpy gravity, weird density, and maybe way more going on under the hood than we're supposed to believe. There are even people who swear they've filmed the moon glitching, a ripple running across the surface like it's a refreshing TV screen. Is it a compression artifact? Atmosphere? Is this a simulation and that's a bad render? We'll park that one for another episode. All in all, I'm not telling you that's what's there. I'm just saying the layout is convenient. Okay, so let's play with it a bit. Let's say the moon really is more hollow, more cavernous than we've been told. Not just a few tubes and caverns here and there, a lot of internal empty volume. You've basically got three broad stories. One, it's natural. Giant impact, molten mess, cooling, lava tubes. It just cooled in a way that happens to look suspicious once you start poking it. Two, naturally. Then someone moved in. You get a moon, however, you get it. At some point, a spacefaring civilization carves out chunks of the interior for bases. Whatever. They use the far side as a radio quiet zone. They hide in the caverns. From the surface of Earth, all you see is some craters and a pretty light in the night sky. But option 3, the full spaceship moon scenario. The moon is a shell, a craft, a piece of engineering with rocky skin. The ringing, the density, the caverns, all of that is scaffolding, machinery and hangar space. The whole thing is parked in orbit as a stabilizer. An observation post, a siege ship. Who knows? The point is, once you open the door to the fact that this thing might not just be another random rock, the number of possible stories explodes. In all versions, boring rock, colonized rock, or full-blown alien machine, the moon stops being a background prop and becomes something more like a character in a story. It's doing something. So here's where I land with this. Without the moon, Earth is a very different place. Different tides, different tilt, different climate. Maybe no stable window for life to crawl out of the ocean and start overthinking what the moon is. And yet the thing that holds all of this together is hanging there right above our heads. Perfect eclipses, ringing when you hit it, hidden caverns under the surface, pretending to be just a boring grey rock. We just never really question it. And yet, clearly someone at NASA did. Because think about this. If you believe it, which I go back and forth on, we pulled off the craziest stunt in human history. We strapped 3 guys to a controlled explosion and tossed them 400,000 kilometers at a glowing rock in the sky. They landed, walked around, planted a flag. After a handful of missions, we were like, yeah, nah, we're good. And we didn't go back for 50 years. Why? That doesn't make sense to me. We can carpet the planet in Starlink, throw sports cars into deep space, and talk about colonizing Mars. But the one place we actually went, supposedly, that stays off the holiday list. Why? And then there's the first big press conference when they got home. If you just survived that launch, walked on another world, and made it back in one piece, do you act like that? Watch it with fresh eyes.
Gets that same impression from the pictures. And the two of you who were on the moon, what impression you have along those lines?
Well, the moon changes character as the angle of sunlight striking its surface changes. At very low sun angles, close to the terminator, or dawn or at dusk, it has the the harsh, forbidding characteristics which you see in a lot of the photographs.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
I believe that what this country set out to do was something that was going to be done sooner or later, whether we set a specific goal or not. I believe that from the early space flights we demonstrated a potential to carry out this type of a mission, and again it was a question of time until this would be accomplished. I think the relative ease with which we were able to carry out our mission, which of course came after a very efficient and a logical sequence of flights, I think that this demonstrated that we were certainly on the right track when we took this commitment to go to the moon. I think that what this means is that many other problems perhaps can be solved in the same way by taking a commitment to solve them in a long time fashion.
Okay, now they don't look like guys who just unlocked level 2 of human civilization. They look like men who've seen something they're not allowed to mention. Heads down, weirdly flat, long pauses. Awkward glances at each other like they're waiting for someone off camera to approve every sentence. NASA will tell you it was exhaustion, decompression, and media pressure. Maybe that's what it was. So if we really did make it to the moon when they claim they did, maybe when you step out onto that grey dust, something made them realize that this thing under their boots is not just a dead rock. Maybe you sense you're walking on somebody else's hardware. And after that, quietly going back to the moon stops being a priority and starts being a problem. We just never question it. So the real question for me isn't, is the moon natural or artificial? It's what do you do if one day someone finally admits it? It was put there. What if they roll out the data and go, yeah, it's not what we told you. It's older than we said. It's more hollow than we said. It's been managing things here for a long time. Are you actually ready to know who put it there? Why it is the size it is? Why it's locked to us? What is inside those caverns on the far side? There are so many things that don't add up about the moon. So many theories about what it could be. If it's not a natural anomaly, is it a spaceship brought here to stabilize our planet when our creators decided this planet would house their creation? Is it a base for aliens? Is it a soul recycler keeping us trapped in a cycle of reincarnation? Is it all of the above? So many theories about whether we actually landed there or not. This is all going to be covered in an upcoming episode, and it's a fun one. For now, let's just consider that once you lift the lid and see what the moon really is, you don't get to go back to seeing it as a pretty circle in the night sky ever again. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging around and watching. If you thought it was fun, please like, subscribe, comment. It really helps out the channel so I can bring you more weird ideas like this. And remember, stay curious and question everything.